On July 30th, 2008, a 22-year-old man boarded a Greyhound bus heading home. He never arrived. What happened next was so brutal, so depraved, that it would shake Canada to its core and spark a national debate about mental illness and justice. This is the true story of Vince Li. Vince Wagwang Li was a 40-year-old Chinese immigrant living in Canada. On the surface, he seemed ordinary, quiet, kept to himself. But beneath that calm exterior, something was deeply wrong. Li suffered from untreated schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that distorts reality. He experienced vivid, terrifying hallucinations and delusions that God was speaking to him, commanding him to do unspeakable things. In the weeks before July 30th, Li's mental state deteriorated rapidly. He became convinced that demonic forces surrounded him. He saw aliens disguised as humans. He believed people were plotting against him. His delusions grew darker, more violent. Li was spiraling, and no one was there to stop him. On July 28th, Li boarded a Greyhound bus in Edmonton, Alberta, heading east toward Winnipeg, Manitoba. He carried 3 pieces of luggage. Inside one bag, a large Rambo-style knife. Inside another, plastic bags. He had prepared for something. Whether he knew exactly what remains unclear, but the tools were ready. Schizophrenia is a devastating illness. It doesn't just make you sad or anxious, it rewires your perception of reality. Li's delusions were specific and terrifying. He believed that demonic entities were hunting him. He thought people around him were aliens in human disguise, sent to destroy him and everyone he loved. In the days before the bus trip, Li's behavior became increasingly erratic. He checked himself into a hospital in Edmonton, claiming he was hearing voices and experiencing paranoid thoughts. Doctors wanted to keep him for a month of observation and treatment, but Li refused. He checked himself out against medical advice. Why? Because his delusions told him the hospital was part of the conspiracy. The doctors weren't trying to help him. They were trying to trap him. So he left, untreated and unmedicated, his mind spiraling deeper into psychosis. On July 29th, Li arrived in Erickson, Manitoba, and sat on a bench outside a grocery store for hours. Witnesses reported seeing him sitting bolt upright at 3 a.m., eyes wide open, staring at nothing. He wasn't sleeping. He was trapped in his own nightmare, unable to distinguish between his delusions and reality. That morning, desperate for money, he sold his laptop to a 15-year-old boy for just $60. He was unraveling. His mind was at war with itself. And then, around 6 p.m. on July 30th, he boarded the bus again. At 6:55 p.m., Greyhound Bus 1170 departed Erickson with 38 passengers aboard. Among them, Vince Li, tall, shaved head, dark sunglasses, moving erratically through the aisles. He first sat near the front. Then, after a scheduled rest stop in Brandon, he moved. He sat directly next to Tim McLean. Tim was 22 years old, a carnival worker heading home for a break. He was ordinary, kind, unsuspecting. He had no idea that the man sitting next to him was experiencing a full psychotic episode. Tim put on his headphones, leaned against the window, and fell asleep. According to Li's later confession, this is when it happened. Li looked at Tim's sleeping face, and his delusions crystallized into absolute certainty. He saw Tim as a demon, an alien in human form. God had spoken to him, Li believed, and commanded him to kill this creature before it could harm everyone on the bus. Li reached into his bag. His hand closed around the knife. He had prepared for this moment, whether consciously or not. The blade was large, sharp, and ready. Tim was asleep. He had no chance. What happened next was a nightmare made real. Li didn't hesitate. He didn't pause. He pulled the knife and began stabbing Tim in the neck and chest. Over and over. Tim screamed, a blood-curdling scream that would haunt witnesses for the rest of their lives. Passengers erupted in panic. They screamed for the bus to stop. The driver, hearing the chaos, pulled to the side of the road and fled with all other passengers. They huddled outside, horrified, unable to process what they were seeing. The bus driver and 2 other men tried to rescue Tim. They approached the locked doors, desperate to help. But Lee, now in a frenzy of violence, slashed at them from inside, driving them back. He had Tim on the aisle floor now, still plunging the blade down again and again with a calm precision. Then Lee did something that would define this crime in infamy. He decapitated Tim. He severed his head from his body. And then, in front of the horrified witnesses outside, he held the severed head up to the window, displaying it like a trophy. But he wasn't finished. Lee opened Tim's chest. He tore at his organs. He removed the heart, lungs, and liver. He ripped out entrails. Every piece of Tim's body was defiled, mutilated, strewn across the bus floor. And then, in an act of cannibalism that shocked the nation, Lee began consuming Tim's flesh. This went on for hours. Hours. While police negotiators tried to talk him down, while traumatized witnesses vomited at the roadside, while Tim McLean's body was desecrated beyond recognition.
Badger appears to be a 6-foot-tall Asian male.
By 8:30 p.m., RCMP in Portage La Prairie received the call. Officers arrived to find a scene from hell. Lee was still on the bus, still defiling the corpse. Police saw him eating parts of Tim's body. They heard him say, "I have to stay on the bus forever." For 4 hours, negotiators tried to reason with him, but Lee was unreachable. His delusions had completely consumed his mind. He alternately paced the bus and mutilated the corpse. He was trapped in his own psychotic reality, unable to hear reason or logic.
Badger appears to be a 6-foot-tall Asian male, short dark hair, black t-shirt, armed with a knife right now. Badger is armed with a knife and a pair of scissors, and he's defiling the body at the front of the bus as we speak. Zulu Delta 1 at your leisure, could you give me a shout? Delta 1 Zulu. Okay, Badger's at the back of the bus, hacking off pieces and eating it.
Then, at 1:30 a.m. on July 31st, Lee made a desperate move. He smashed a window, trying to escape. Police were waiting. They tasered him twice. Lee fell to the ground, and officers moved in. He was handcuffed and placed in the back of a police cruiser. When they searched him, they found Tim's ear, nose, and tongue in his pockets. His eyes and part of his heart were never recovered, presumed consumed. Tim McLean's body, what remained of it, was placed in plastic bags and removed from the bus. Lee, sitting in the back of the police car, admitted his guilt immediately. He begged police to kill him. He knew what he had done. And in that moment, the full horror of his crime became undeniable. On March 5, 2009, Vince Lee stood trial for the murder of Tim McLean. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses had seen everything. Lee's own confession was detailed and damning, but Lee's defense team made a shocking argument. He was not criminally responsible due to mental illness. The court accepted this defense. Lee was found not criminally responsible, or NCR, due to schizophrenia. This meant that while Lee committed the acts, he was deemed legally insane at the time. He couldn't distinguish right from wrong because his psychosis had completely distorted his perception of reality. This verdict sparked outrage across Canada. Many believed Lee should have been convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Critics argued that regardless of his mental state, Lee had planned the crime. He brought the knife, the plastic bags. He showed intent and premeditation. But the law is complex. Canadian law recognizes that severe mental illness can negate criminal responsibility. If someone is so psychotic that they cannot understand the nature or quality of their act, they cannot be held criminally responsible in the traditional sense. Lee was committed to a secure psychiatric hospital for treatment. He was prescribed olanzapine, an antipsychotic medication. He began learning about his illness and ways to cope. Years later, he was granted conditional release, eventually changing his name to Will Baker. This case sparked national debate about mental health, criminal justice, and victim rights, a debate that continues to this day. Tim McLean was 22 years old. He was a carnival worker, heading home for a break. He had his whole life ahead of him. He had dreams, family, people who loved him, and in a moment of random, senseless violence, his life was stolen by a man he'd never met, a man whose mind was shattered by untreated mental illness. Tim's family was devastated. His mother had to live with the knowledge of how her son died, not just murdered, but mutilated and cannibalized. The trauma of this crime rippled through his entire family, through the witnesses on that bus, through the first responders who had to process the scene. The NCR verdict, while legally justified, felt like a second wound to Tim's family. They had to watch the man who killed their son receive treatment and eventual conditional release, while Tim remained dead. There was no closure, no traditional justice, only the complex reality of Canadian law. Tim McLean's story reminds us of the randomness of tragedy. It reminds us that mental illness, while not an excuse for violence, is a real and devastating factor in crimes like this. And it reminds us that victims matter, their lives, their families, their legacies. This case raises profound questions about mental illness, criminal justice, and victim rights. There are no easy answers, but by understanding these stories, we can have more informed conversations about how we treat mental illness, how we protect victims, and how we balance compassion with accountability. If this story moved you, please like this video. Comment below. Do you think the NCR verdict was just? Subscribe for more deep dive true crime stories that challenge how we think about justice, and share this video to raise awareness about mental health and the importance of early intervention. Thank you for watching. Rest in peace, Tim McLean.